religion in the Legend of Zelda series. It's actually one of the main driving points behind the game's lore, as the concept of each title is about the prophesized legend repeating itself, with a destined hero chosen by the goddess, and their goddess being reborn into anew as mortal reincarnations of herself, all in order to stop the curse forever plaguing Hyrule. But before this fictional religion of Hylia that we all know, and the Triforce being the key to all power, the series has had references to actual real-world religions, with Nintendo over time censoring or outright getting rid of any references to them. And this dates to the very first Zelda game ever released, the original Legend of Zelda, with something as simple as having Link's shield have a design of a cross, along with the many darknets you face throughout the game, resembling a Crusader shield. And while some may say the cross design doesn't have to mean Christianity, they took it a step further with the Book of Magic. With it also having a cross on its cover, it was also straight up known as the Bible in the Japanese version. Of course, with how Nintendo of America has been known to try to stay away from real-world religious themes when translating their games, that never made it to the English version. Similar themes carried on to the second game release in the series, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, as a cross was an actual obtainable item that was used to make invisible enemies become visible. And this wasn't changed in the English version, as with the item being a cross, how could you hide that? The game also had enemies like Wizrobes having crosses on their robes. The third game to ever be released in the series took it the furthest with Christianity though, as there is official artwork for The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, where Link is kneeling to a crucifix. And I'm pretty sure that isn't a depiction of the previous Link who is hanging on that cross. That's Jesus. Along with the fact that the sanctuary heavily resembles a church in both A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds. And the sage found throughout the sanctuary was also known as a priest in the Japanese version of the game. But speaking of both titles, the Japanese version had much more religious names for both of them, being known as The Legend of Zelda: Triforce of the Gods for A Link to the Past, and Triforce of the Gods 2 for A Link Between Worlds. Though the themes to Christianity had stopped for the most part with later titles after A Link to the Past. But it didn't mean that Nintendo had stopped borrowing influence from other real-world religions. As in The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, the game had several themes to the religion of Islam, which ended up being so controversial they were removed in later releases for the game. Though back then you couldn't just patch things out or update it through the internet, so most early cartridge copies of Ocarina of Time still have these in them. The first would be the music found within the Fire Temple. In the original release for the game, you could clearly hear Islamic chanting in the background. While it's hard to make out most of it, one part is very clear, which plays Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. This translates to, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. This being the first verse in the Quran. An opening phrase Muslims use for almost anything they do. And as someone who grew up Muslim, who lived in Egypt for 5 years, this is something I've heard thousands of times, and I'm not mistaken that this is exactly what was said. The other part of the Fire Temple's theme that could be debated is the repeated chanting that echoes La ilaha illallah, which translates to, there is no God but Allah. This is a bit harder to tell as the chanting overlaps each other, but I wouldn't be surprised as they certainly used Islamic reciting with the other part of the theme. Another Islamic theme that is found in the game's original release is with the Gerudo symbol. As most fans of the series may know, The Gerudo symbol has been the same symbol we've seen used since Ocarina of Time all the way to Breath of the Wild. But surprisingly, this wasn't the original symbol Nintendo first went for. As before the game was censored, the original symbol was based on the Islamic symbol but in reverse, being a crescent moon with a star, but instead of the star it was a different shape with points on it, though clearly the similarities show. And this symbol was used for all the block switches and even the mirror shield, as it was the symbol of the Gerudo, before Nintendo changed it when updating it to the new logo we see till today. While some may say this is a stretch, the fact that Nintendo decided to remove it, recreating the Gerudo symbol into an entirely new one, shows that they either saw the similarities or were aware that they took inspiration from it. So for those who have the original copies of Ocarina of Time or found other ways to play it, you will see a vast difference in the Gerudo symbols when playing. The game's changes also added other small things like how Ganondorf spit out green blood instead of red, as even that was censored from the original release. So it's crazy to see how different standards were for censorship and how Nintendo tried to replace it all. But because there was no way of patching things through the internet, and in general, once the games were out, there was no way of deleting them, there will be a ton of copies of Ocarina of Time that will forever have these changes unchanged. Though with the even earlier games, the Christianity references were never removed. But imagine if Nintendo had continued to have Christianity be a heavy theme throughout the series. What would the series look like now? Though I'm glad Nintendo managed to make a fictional religion that still heavily impacts the series till today, with now the Triforce being the symbol of their religion, and a goddess that is known to be reincarnated throughout its history, along with the prophesized hero that is destined to save Hyrule every time he is reborn. While I don't believe Nintendo ever wanted to use real-world religions as a heavy theme throughout their games, they clearly looked at them as an artistic inspiration for the games early on. But what do you guys think of these themes and Nintendo's past? Please let me know in the comments below, and leave a like if you enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe as I have tons more of interesting videos like these on the way. As always, I've been ZeldaMaster, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.